original narrative, especially created for love behind gold. Eliza Matthews stared at her untouched birthday cake. The single candles flamed dancing in the empty restaurant as the clock struck midnight. 30 years old, successful yet alone, with nothing but the echo of champagne glasses being washed in the kitchen. The sudden swing of the door made her look up, and her heart stopped. Mason Pine stood there, not the freckled boy who'd promised to marry her if they were both single at 30, but a man whose face graced business magazines, whose empire had been built, while she planned other people's perfect moments. His eyes held the same intensity they had 15 years ago, when they'd made that childish pact beneath summer stars. "I've come to keep my promise," he said, placing a small velvet box beside her cake, the diamond inside worth more than her apartment. Eliza blinked at the diamond ring, glittering under the restaurant's dim lighting, her mind struggling to process Mason Pine's sudden appearance after 12 years of silence. "I don't understand," she managed, looking up at the man who had once been her best friend. "You can't be serious." Mason pulled out a chair across from her, his tailored suit a stark contrast to her simple black dress. His features had sharpened with age, but those eyes, the same deep blue that had once promised her the world, hadn't changed. "Happy birthday, Eliza," he said, his voice deeper than she remembered. "May I?" He gestured toward the bottle of wine. She nodded, still speechless, as he poured himself a glass. 12 years, she finally said. 12 years without a word. "And you walk in here expecting me to remember some silly childhood promise?" A slight smile curved his lips. "So you do remember." Of course she remembered. How could she forget that summer evening after graduation? They'd been 18, lying on the hood of his beat-up car, staring at the stars. Both of them headed to different colleges, both terrified of what the future held. "If we're both still single at 30, let's just marry each other," he had said, half joking. "No drama, no heartbreak, just us." "Deal," she'd laughed, extending her pinky finger to seal their childish pact. "I thought it was a joke," Eliza said, pulling herself back to the present. "We were kids." Mason's expression remained serious. "I never joke about promises." A waiter approached, startled to see the famous Mason Pine in their modest establishment. Mason waved him away with practiced ease. "You've done well for yourself," Eliza observed, trying to regain her composure. "Pine Innovations. The youngest billionaire on Forbes' list. Quite a leap from the boy who couldn't afford prom tickets." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or nostalgia. "And you're one of the most sought-after event planners in the city. I've followed your career. You've been keeping tabs on me." The thought unsettled her. "Enough to know you're single," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "As am I." Eliza laughed, the sound brittle even to her own ears. "So you actually expect me to marry you because of some ridiculous pact we made as teenagers?" "I expect nothing," Mason said, leaning forward. "I'm simply honoring my word." The memory of their last day together flashed through her mind. Mason standing by his packed car, promising to call, to visit. Promises that had dissolved into silence as he built his empire, and she pieced together her own life. "Why now, Mason? Why really?" She pushed the ring box toward him. "This isn't about some childhood promise. What's your angle?" For a moment, vulnerability cracked through his composed exterior. "Maybe I'm tired of empty success. Maybe I remembered the last time I was truly happy. With me." Eliza's voice softened despite herself. "With you." The restaurant had emptied. Only the staff remained, discreetly lingering to glimpse the famous billionaire. "This is insane," Eliza whispered. "People don't do this." "I do," Mason replied simply. "I've built my life on calculated risks. And this," he pushed the ring back toward her, "might be my most important one." Eliza stared at the ring, memories flooding back. Summers spent building forts in her backyard. Mason tutoring her through algebra. The way he defended her against high school bullies. The friend who had known her better than anyone. "We're strangers now," she said quietly. "Then let's get reacquainted." He reached for her hand, his touch sending an unexpected current through her. 1 month. Give me 1 month to prove this makes sense. And if it doesn't, then you keep the ring as a birthday gift, and I'll disappear again. The waiter returned with her bill. Mason took it before she could reach for it. "I can pay for my own dinner," she protested. Mason paused, studying her. Some things never change. Still fiercely independent. And you're still presumptuous. His laugh was genuine, warming the space between them. For a moment, she glimpsed the boy she'd known, before wealth, before distance had transformed him. "One dinner," Eliza finally said. "Not a month, just dinner. Tomorrow night. You can make your case then." Mason's smile was triumphant as he stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. "I'll send a car at 8. I can drive myself." "Of course you can." He left the ring box on the table. "Think of it as a birthday present, regardless of what you decide tomorrow." As he turned to leave, Eliza called after him. "Mason." He paused, looking back. "Why did you really keep this promise when you broke all the others?" Something complex passed across his face. Determination, perhaps, or a deeper emotion she couldn't name. "Some promises define us, Eliza. This one defined me. With that." He was gone, leaving her alone with a diamond ring worth more than her yearly salary, and the impossible question of whether a childhood promise could really bridge the years and worlds between them. Eliza's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., jolting her from dreams filled with blue eyes and impossible promises. She silenced it with a practiced swipe, her mind immediately filling with the day's to-do list. Final walkthrough for the Thompson wedding, vendor confirmations for the charity gala, and somehow finding time to process Mason Pine's reappearance in her life. Her small apartment was a testament to her career. Vision boards for upcoming events covered one wall. Swatches of fabric and color palettes littered her coffee table. And her calendar was a complex matrix of deadlines and meetings. Everything in its place. Everything planned to perfection, until last night. Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. "Crisis at the venue. Florist. Delivered wrong arrangements." Eliza sighed. Another day of solving other people's problems, while her own life remained perpetually on hold. Across town, Mason stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, watching the city awaken beneath him. Analysts in Tokyo awaited his decision on a billion-dollar acquisition. His phone buzzed constantly with notifications from his executive team. But for the first time in years, business wasn't his primary focus. "Sir, the board meeting starts in 20 minutes. His assistant reminded him through the intercom. "Cancel it," Mason replied, surprising himself. "Reschedule for next week." He turned back to the city view, remembering how he and Eliza had once dreamed of living in a place like this. She'd wanted to be an architect then, designing spaces that brought people together. He'd wanted to create technology that changed the world. They'd planned it all under starlit skies, making promises neither of them had the power to keep, until now. At noon, Eliza stood in the center of a ballroom, directing staff as they transformed the space for that evening's charity event. Crystal chandeliers caught the light. Tables were being set with precision. And the stage awaited the band that would play for New York's elite. "Ms. Matthews, where do you want the ice sculpture?" a young assistant asked. Before she could answer, her phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Looking forward to tonight, MP." The simple message sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. 12 years of silence. And now he was texting her like no time had passed at all. "Ms. Matthews," the assistant repeated. "Center of the main table," Eliza answered, pushing thoughts of Mason aside. "And make sure it's lit from below." She'd built this career from nothing, starting as an assistant herself, working 80-hour weeks, learning every aspect of the business, until she could launch her own company. Matthews Events was now the go-to for anyone who mattered in New York. She'd earned every client, every success, unlike Mason, whose family connections had given him a head start. At least, that's what she'd always believed. "Ms. Matthews, there's a delivery for you," another assistant called. A courier handed her a small package. Inside was a faded photograph. Her and Mason at 18, arms around each other on graduation day, and a note. "To remind you who we were before the world changed us. See you tonight." The photograph hit her harder than the diamond ring had. They looked so young, so full of possibility. When had they lost that connection? Was it when Mason's father died during their freshman year of college? When he dropped out to take over the failing family business? Or when Eliza, hurt by his growing distance, had stopped reaching out? By 7 that evening, Eliza stood in her apartment, staring at her reflection. She'd chosen a simple blue dress. The color Mason had once said matched her eyes. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked nothing like the harried event planner who'd been barking orders all day. Her phone rang, her mother's number. "Did you have a good birthday, sweetheart?" her mother asked. "It was unexpected," Eliza replied, not ready to explain Mason's reappearance. "You worked too hard." "When was your last vacation?" "Your last date?" Eliza sighed. "Mom, I'm running late for dinner." "A date?" Her mother's voice lifted with hope. "An old friend," Eliza said, which wasn't exactly a lie. "I'll call you tomorrow." At precisely 8, her doorbell rang. Eliza took a deep breath before opening it, expecting a driver. Instead, Mason himself stood there, holding a small bouquet of daisies, her favorite flowers from childhood. "You remembered," she said, surprised. "I remember everything about you, Eliza." His eyes took in her appearance with appreciation. "You look beautiful." For a moment, they stood in silence, the years between them, both a chasm and a bridge. "Your world seems to suit you," she finally said, gesturing toward the sleek car waiting at the curb. Mason's smile held a hint of sadness. "My world is empty most days. That's why I'm here." As he offered his arm, Eliza realized the truth that had been nagging at her since his appearance. Despite their different paths, despite the success they'd both achieved, perhaps they were both still searching for the same thing, something real in a world built on appearances. The restaurant Mason had chosen was nothing like Eliza had expected. No five-star establishment with Michelin ratings, but a small Italian place tucked away on a quiet street in the village. The owner greeted Mason by name, leading them to a private corner table. "You come here often?" Eliza asked, surprised that the billionaire frequented such a modest establishment. "It reminds me of that place we used to go to in high school," Mason said. "The one where the owner would slip us free tiramisu because you helped his daughter with her English homework." The memory warmed her. "Antonio's. I didn't think you'd remember that. Like I said, I remember everything." The waiter brought wine without being asked, clearly familiar with Mason's preferences. "So," Eliza said after they'd ordered, "you promised to make your case. Why exactly should I marry a man I haven't seen in 12 years? Mason set down his glass, his expression shifting to something more calculated. The businessman emerging. "Let's look at this logically. We're both single at 30. We have history, compatibility, and mutual respect." "Had," she corrected. "We had those things. Past tense." He acknowledged this with a slight nod. "Fair. But we could have them again. We're both successful in our fields, both independent, both past the age of making romantic mistakes based on infatuation." Eliza raised an eyebrow. "You're pitching this like a merger." "In some ways it is. Marriage has always been about combining resources and creating stability. The notion that it must be based solely on passion is relatively modern and deeply romantic," Eliza said dryly. Tell me, does this approach work with all your dates?" A genuine smile broke through his business facade. "I don't date much anymore. No time. So I'm a convenient solution to your scheduling problem." Mason leaned forward, his expression serious again. "You're the only person I've ever considered for this arrangement." "Arrangement," she repeated. "Not exactly the proposal little girls dream about. Would you prefer I got down on one knee in public? Created some elaborate spectacle? That's not us, Eliza. We've always been honest with each other." His words struck a nerve. They had been honest once, brutally so at times. It was one of the things she'd valued most about their friendship. "What exactly would this arrangement entail?" she asked, curiosity getting the better of her. Mason seemed prepared for this question. "A partnership. You'd maintain your business, of course. I'd never ask you to give that up. We'd share our lives, support each other's goals. Over time, perhaps children, if we both wanted that. And what about love?" The word hung between them, weighty and unavoidable. "We already care for each other," he said carefully. "The rest can grow naturally." Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. Eliza used the interruption to gather her thoughts. "You haven't explained what you get out of this," she finally said. "You could have anyone. Models, heiresses, women who move in your social circles." Something hardened in Mason's expression. I've tried those relationships. They all wanted the billionaire, not the person. You knew me before all this. He gestured vaguely, encompassing his wealth and status. You're the only one who might see beyond it. That's a lot of pressure to put on a childhood friendship, is it? Mason challenged. Or is it the most honest foundation we could have? Eliza took a sip of wine, studying him. What if it doesn't work? What if we've changed too much? Then we part as friends, with no regrets. I'll make sure you're more than comfortable. I don't want your money, Mason. I know. His expression softened. That's another reason why it's you. The waiter cleared their plates, leaving them in a moment of silence. Why didn't you stay in touch? Eliza finally asked the question that had haunted her for years. After your father died, you just disappeared. Pain flashed across Mason's face. I was drowning. The company was millions in debt. Creditors were circling. I had to drop out, work 20-hour days just to keep everything from collapsing. He paused. I didn't want to drag you down with me. That wasn't your choice to make, she said quietly. I would have been there for you. Exactly. And you would have put your dreams on hold to help me. I couldn't let you do that. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Mason glanced at it and frowned. Take it, Eliza said. I know how business works. Mason surprised her by turning the phone off completely. No, tonight is about us. The gesture touched her more than she wanted to admit. As they shared dessert tiramisu in a nod to their past, Mason reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. Just think about it, he said. 1 month. Give us 1 month to see if this could work. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision. His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending unexpected warmth through her. But I hope you don't. The physical contact broke something between them. The careful distance they'd maintained all evening. Suddenly, Eliza was acutely aware of him not as the billionaire, or even as her childhood friend, but as a man whose touch affected her in ways she hadn't anticipated. 1 month, she found herself saying. No promises beyond that. Mason's smile was triumphant but gentle. That's all I'm asking for. As they left the restaurant, his hand settled at the small of her back, a gesture both protective and possessive. Outside, rain had begun to fall, and Mason pulled her close under his umbrella. For a moment, their faces were inches apart, his eyes dropping to her lips. Eliza felt herself leaning in, drawn by a force she couldn't name, before catching herself. 1 month, she repeated, stepping back slightly. Starting tomorrow. But as his driver took her home, Eliza knew something fundamental had already shifted between them. Something that felt dangerously like possibility. The first week of their arrangement passed in a blur of carefully orchestrated meetings, lunches at exclusive restaurants, a private showing at an art gallery, a weekend drive to the countryside in Mason's vintage convertible. Through it all, Eliza found herself searching for the boy she'd once known in the powerful man beside her. Sometimes she caught glimpses, in his laugh when she told a particularly bad joke, in the way he still bounced his leg when impatient, in how he remembered her coffee order from 12 years ago. Other times, he seemed like a stranger, taking calls that made stock markets shift, commanding rooms with a subtle authority, navigating a world of wealth she could barely comprehend. On the 8th day, Mason invited her to a charity gala, one her company had been trying to secure as a client for years. You're using me, Eliza realized as they stepped onto the red carpet, cameras flashing around them. This is why you wanted me here tonight, to help you impress the Morrison Foundation. Mason didn't deny it. I'm giving you access to clients you couldn't reach on your own. Is that so wrong? It is if you're only doing it to manipulate me into this arrangement. His jaw tightened. I'm doing it because I believe in your talent. The fact that it benefits us both is just good business. Before she could respond, they were surrounded by New York's elite, all vying for Mason's attention. Eliza watched as he transformed, his smile more practiced, his laugh more controlled. This was the public Mason Pine, CEO and billionaire, not the man who had shared tiramisu with her a week ago. Mason, darling. A tall, elegant woman in her 40s approached, kissing him on both cheeks. The board was just discussing your latest acquisition. Brilliant move. Thank you, Victoria. May I introduce Eliza Matthews? Eliza, this is Victoria Harrington, my company's chief legal counsel. Victoria's smile cooled as she assessed Eliza. Ah, the childhood friend. Mason mentioned you'd reconnected. Her tone suggested exactly what she thought of that reconnection. Throughout the evening, Eliza met more of Mason's inner circle, his CFO, his head of security, his most trusted advisors. Each regarded her with the same barely concealed skepticism. She was an outsider, a potential threat to their carefully constructed world. They don't approve of me, Eliza observed as they shared a quiet moment on the balcony, away from prying eyes. Mason sighed. They're protective. They've seen people try to use me before. Is that what they think I'm doing? Using you? Some of them, yes. His honesty was refreshing, if painful. They don't know you like I do. Do you know me, Mason? Really? It's been 12 years. He turned to face her, the city lights illuminating his profile. I know enough. The rest I want to discover. Later that night, as they walked through his penthouse after the gala, Eliza found herself drawn to a photograph on his desk, the only personal item in the otherwise minimalist space. It showed a teenage Mason with an older man who shared his eyes. Your father, she said softly. Mason nodded, his expression vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen since his return. The last photo we took together. You never really told me what happened after he died. Mason was quiet for a long moment. He left me a failing company and $30 million in debt. Everyone expected me to sell, to walk away. But it was his life's work. So you saved it. I rebuilt it, he corrected. Sold off the failing divisions, pivoted to technology, worked every contact I had. For 3 years, I lived on 4 hours of sleep a night. Why didn't you reach out to me? The question that had haunted her for years. Mason's gaze was heavy with unspoken regret. By the time I got my head above water, you were building your own career. I saw you in a magazine, planning that senator's wedding. You looked happy, complete. I didn't want to disrupt that. That wasn't your decision to make, Eliza said, echoing her words from their dinner. No, he agreed. But I was 21 and drowning in responsibilities I never asked for. I made a lot of mistakes. The vulnerability in his admission cracked something in Eliza's carefully maintained defenses. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. I would have answered if you'd called, she said softly. Mason's fingers intertwined with hers, warm and solid. I know that now. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities. Mason stepped closer, his free hand coming up to brush a strand of hair from her face. Eliza, he murmured, her name a question and a plea. The ringing of his phone shattered the moment. Mason closed his eyes briefly in frustration before answering. This better be important, James. His voice transformed into the clipped tones of the businessman. What? When? His expression darkened. No, don't release a statement. I'll handle it personally. He hung up, tension radiating from him. What is it? Eliza asked. Someone leaked information about us to the press. They're running a story tomorrow suggesting our relationship is a publicity stunt to humanize me before a controversial merger. Eliza felt cold. Is it a publicity stunt? Of course not. Mason looked genuinely hurt by the suggestion. But the timing is unfortunate. What merger? Mason hesitated. I'm acquiring Matthews Events' largest competitor. The revelation hit Eliza like a physical blow. You're buying out Westfield Planning without telling me. They're my biggest rival. It's a business decision that predates our arrangement. Arrangement, Eliza repeated, the word suddenly bitter. That's all this is to you, isn't it? A convenient arrangement that happens to benefit your business image. That's not fair, Mason protested. The acquisition has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with us. You're reshaping my entire industry without even mentioning it to me. What else haven't you told me, Mason? The distance between them seemed to expand with each passing second. Not just physical space, but the vast gulf between their worlds, their perspectives, their truths. I think I should go, Eliza finally said. Mason didn't stop her as she gathered her things, but at the door, he called her name. The merger doesn't change how I feel about you, he said quietly. Eliza paused, not turning around. The problem is, I don't know if I can believe that anymore. The headline glared from every business publication the next morning. Pine's romantic redemption. Billionaire's childhood sweetheart softens cutthroat image. Ahead of controversial Westfield acquisition. Beneath it, photos of Mason and Eliza at the gala, his hand protectively at her waist. Her smile captured in a moment of genuine happiness. The article detailed their childhood connection, speculated about wedding plans, and analyzed how their relationship might improve public perception of Mason's business tactics. Eliza's phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Clients, employees, industry contacts all wanting confirmation. Even her mother had called. Hurt that she'd learned about her daughter's relationship from the business section. By noon, Eliza had turned off her phone and retreated to her office, blinds drawn against the photographers who had gathered outside her building. A knock at her door made her look up. Her assistant, Rachel, stood there with a concerned expression. "Mr. Pine is here," she said quietly. "Should I tell him you're unavailable?" Eliza sighed, rubbing her temples. "No, send him in." Mason entered, looking as polished as ever in a tailored suit, though the shadows under his eyes suggested he'd slept as little as she had. "I've issued a statement denying the merger is connected to our relationship," he said without preamble. "My PR team is handling the fallout." "Your PR team," Eliza repeated. "Of course you have a team for this. What am I supposed to do?" "I have clients questioning my integrity, Mason. They think I'm using my connection to you to sabotage competitors. I can help with that." "That's exactly the problem." Eliza stood, anger finally breaking through her professional composure. "I don't want your help. I built this company on my own. My reputation is everything." Mason's expression hardened. "You think this is easy for me? The board is questioning my judgment. Shareholders are concerned. I'm making decisions based on personal feelings, rather than business strategy." "Are you?" Eliza challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, our arrangement seems perfectly timed to soften your image during a controversial acquisition." "That's not fair," Mason said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I came to you because of a promise. Because despite everything, you're the only person I've ever trusted completely." "Trusted?" Eliza laughed bitterly. "You didn't trust me enough to mention you were buying out my largest competitor. It was confidential information. I'm supposed to be your future wife." The words hung in the air between them, shocking them both with their intensity. Mason stepped closer, his anger giving way to something more vulnerable. "Is that what you want? To be my wife?" The question stripped away Eliza's defenses. Did she? In just 2 weeks, he had upended her carefully ordered life, reawakened feelings she'd buried years ago. But could she trust those feelings when their worlds were so fundamentally different? "I don't know," she admitted. "Everything's happening so fast. This arrangement, the publicity, the merger. I feel like I'm losing control of my own life." "Then let's slow down," Mason suggested. "Take a step back. No pressure, no arrangements. Just us figuring out what we want." For a moment, hope flickered between them. Then Mason's phone rang, the special tone he'd set for board members. "You should take that," Eliza said, resignation settling over her. "It's what you do." Mason hesitated, clearly torn. "This doesn't have to be the end, doesn't it?" Eliza moved to the window, pulling back the blinds to reveal the photographers still waiting outside. "Look at what's happening. Your world is swallowing mine whole. My clients see me as your accessory. Your board sees me as a liability. I don't care what they think." "But you should," she said quietly. "That's your reality, Mason. Board meetings, acquisitions, stock prices. Mine is creating beautiful moments for other people while trying to keep my business afloat. We're too different now." The phone continued to ring, an insistent reminder of the world demanding his attention. "If I don't answer, does that prove something to you?" Mason asked, an edge of frustration in his voice. Eliza turned to face him fully. "This isn't a test. It's reality. Your company needs you. It always will." "And what about what I need?" The raw vulnerability in his question nearly broke her resolve. "Maybe what you need isn't me," Eliza said softly. "Maybe it's the idea of me. The connection to who you were before all this." Mason's expression shuddered. The businessman replacing the man she'd glimpsed beneath. "So that's it. You're ending our arrangement." The word stung more now than it had before. "Yes, I'm ending it." He nodded once sharply. I'll have my team issue a statement that we've decided to remain friends. It should help mitigate the damage to your reputation. Always practical, always in control. This was the Mason Pine the world knew. Efficient, detached, unstoppable. But as he turned to leave, Eliza caught a glimpse of something else in his eyes. Not anger or frustration, but a profound sadness that mirrored her own. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, Eliza, none of this was a business strategy. It was always about you. Then he was gone, leaving Eliza alone with the certainty that she'd done the right thing, and the devastating feeling that the right thing had just broken her heart. 3 weeks after ending their arrangement, Eliza found herself standing outside her childhood home. Her mother had insisted she come for the weekend, concerned about the shadows under her daughter's eyes, the weight she'd lost, the forced brightness in her voice during their calls. The small suburban house looked exactly as it had when she was growing up. White picket fence, blue shutters, her mother's roses blooming along the walkway. A constant in a world that had shifted beneath her feet. "You're brooding again," her mother observed as they sat on the porch swing after dinner, watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. "I'm thinking," Eliza corrected. "There's a difference." "Not from where I'm sitting." Her mother handed her a cup of tea. "Want to talk about him?" Eliza sighed. "There's nothing to talk about. It was a mistake, was it? You've been half alive since you ended things. It wasn't real, Mom. It was an arrangement based on a childhood promise, a business merger disguised as a relationship." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Did I ever tell you about the promise your father made me when we started dating?" Eliza shook her head, surprised by the change of subject. "He promised to build me a house with a porch swing where we could grow old together." Her mother smiled at the memory. He was 19, broke, working 3 jobs to put himself through community college. "It was an impossible promise, but he meant it," Eliza said softly. "Oh, I don't know if he meant it literally. What 19-year-old truly understands what they're promising? But he meant the feeling behind it, that he wanted a future with me in it." She patted Eliza's hand. "Sometimes promises are just the best way we know to say, 'I love you,' when we're too young or too scared to say the actual words." The observation lingered in Eliza's mind as she went through her mother's attic the next day, sorting through old-school memorabilia her mother had saved. In a dusty box labeled high school, she found a faded blue notebook she recognized immediately, her senior year journal. Curious, she opened it to a random page, finding an entry from the spring of their graduation year. "Mason told me today he's going to Stanford on full scholarship. I should be happy for him. But all I can think is that he's leaving. Everyone always leaves. He promised we'd stay friends, but California might as well be another planet. I wish I could tell him how I really feel. But what's the point? He's destined for greatness, and I'm just me." Eliza sat back, memories flooding through her. She'd had feelings for Mason even then. Feelings she'd buried beneath the safe label of friendship because she'd been too afraid of rejection, convinced he was meant for bigger things than a life that included her. At the bottom of the box, she found an envelope with her name, written in Mason's teenage handwriting. Inside was a letter she'd never seen before, dated the day he left for college. "Eliza, there's so much I want to say to you, but I'm not brave enough to say it to your face. I'm not just going to miss you. I'm going to be lost without you. These past 4 years, you've been my anchor, my best friend, and something more that I've never had the courage to name. Maybe that's why I made that stupid promise about getting married at 30. If we're both still single, it wasn't a joke. It was the only way I could imagine securing a future with you without risking everything, by telling you how I really feel. I love you, Eliza Matthews, not as a friend, as everything. But I'm leaving, and you deserve someone who can be there for you, not someone chasing dreams across the country. So I'll keep this letter, and maybe someday, when I've become someone worthy of you, I'll finally be brave enough to give it to you. Always yours." Mason. Eliza's hands trembled as she read the words again. He had loved her then, not as a friend, but as everything. And she had loved him too, though neither had found the courage to say it. But he'd never given her the letter. His father had died, the company had faltered, and the moment had been lost in the chaos of their separate lives. until he'd appeared on her 30th birthday. Still keeping a promise made by a boy, too, afraid to speak his heart. With sudden clarity, Eliza understood. The arrangement, the logical case for marriage. It had been Mason's armor, his way of reaching for what he truly wanted, while protecting himself from rejection. Just as her quick dismissal of their connection had been her own defense mechanism. They'd both been hiding behind practicality, afraid to admit that some promises run deeper than words. Eliza reached for her phone, then hesitated. This wasn't a conversation for texts or calls. Some truths needed to be spoken face to face, no matter how terrifying. It was time to be as brave as they should have been 12 years ago, 1 year later. The rooftop garden of Pine Tower glittered with fairy lights, transforming the corporate space into an enchanted oasis above the city. Eliza surveyed her work with satisfaction. White roses and hydrangeas arranged in crystal vases, tables draped in midnight blue linens, a dance floor beneath the stars. The perfect setting for Pine Innovation's annual charity gala. "Ms. Matthews, the band is ready for sound check," her assistant said, approaching with a tablet. "Perfect. And the lighting for the donor presentation? All set." Mr. Pine approved the final arrangements himself. Eliza smiled at the mention of her husband. Husband. The word still sent a thrill through her, even after 6 months of marriage. "Speaking of Mr. Pine, have you seen him?" she asked. "Last I saw, he was escaping a board member by hiding in your office." Eliza found Mason exactly where her assistant had suggested, standing at the window of what had once been a conference room, but was now the headquarters of the Matthews Pine Foundation, their joint venture, supporting arts education in underserved communities. "Hiding from Lawrence again?" she asked, closing the door behind her. Mason turned, his face lighting up at the sight of her. The man doesn't understand the concept of not during personal time. It's a charity gala. Technically, it's work. Not when my wife planned it. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "This is me admiring your genius, which is decidedly personal." Eliza leaned into his embrace, still marveling at how right it felt. After she'd found his letter, she'd driven straight to his penthouse, terrified but determined. She'd found him packing for Shanghai, throwing himself into work as he always did when wounded. "I found your letter," she'd said without preamble. "The one you wrote before college." Mason had gone still, vulnerable in a way the public never saw. "I should have given it to you then." "Yes, you should have." She'd stepped closer. "Just like I should have told you I was in love with you too." The memory of his expression in that moment, shock giving way to hope, to joy, still made her heart race. "What are you thinking about?" Mason asked now, noticing her smile. "The day we finally stopped hiding behind arrangements and promises." He laughed softly. "The day you nearly gave my security team heart attacks by bypassing all protocols to reach my private elevator." "Worth it," Eliza declared, reaching up to straighten his tie. "Though I still maintain that a honeymoon in the same place we had our first date was unnecessarily sentimental," says the woman who insisted we include our childhood promise in our wedding vows. Their playful argument was interrupted by a knock at the door. Mason's assistant looked apologetic. "Sir, the mayor has arrived early and is asking for you both." "Duty calls," Mason sighed. "Together," Eliza reminded him, taking his hand, as they made their way to greet their guests. Eliza reflected on the changes of the past year. Matthews' events had expanded, now with a special division handling high-profile corporate events, including all of Pine Innovation's functions. Mason had restructured his work schedule to include actual personal time, shocking his executive team, but improving company morale when others followed his example. They'd learned to navigate their different worlds, creating a new one that encompassed both, not without challenges. The press still scrutinized their every move, and merging two successful, independent lives required constant communication and compromise. But underneath it all was the foundation they'd built as children and rediscovered as adults. Absolute trust, genuine friendship, and love that had survived 12 years of separation. Later that night, as they swayed together on the dance floor, the city lights twinkling around them like earthbound stars, Mason whispered in her ear, "I have a new promise for you." Eliza looked up, meeting his gaze. "What's that?" Every promise I make you from now on, I'll keep immediately. No more waiting until we're 30. Eliza laughed, the sound pure and joyful. That's a promise worth keeping. And as Mason pulled her closer, Eliza knew with absolute certainty that some childhood promises were meant to be kept, not because of obligation or arrangements, but because true love, once found, was too precious to ever let go again.